movie or theatre? Well, I would say a book for sure. I'm always reading books, whether it be a handheld book or on Kindle, but I do prefer an actual proper book. So does Mr. Colin Waffles, because I'm sitting for a long time and then he can join me. Movies, yes, that's something I like to do with Mike, so that's more sociable. We sit and put on a movie from YouTube of an evening or a hot afternoon when we're in siesta time. So that. Theatre, well, that's my background, TV and stage work. So that's always fun, particularly behind the scenes, backstage. But overall, for me, book.
Film. Get bored with books and theatre. Not really into theatre either, to be perfectly honest. I much more rather sit and watch an enjoyable film.
Well, food-wise, Zivanir is the main drink, which is like a fire water, if you like. They say you can put it on paint to strip paint. It's good for your stomach, sure, it burns out any infection, but it's like a short drink. You only have a tiny bit, it's very clear and it's super. That's what the main drink of Cyprus is, although there are other things Cyprus is known for drink purposes. Our main brand of beer is Keo, and there are many more other drinks typical only of Cyprus. Food, I would say, obviously, if you're cooking in a certain way, then kleftiko is the way to cook the lamb in the oven for hours, normally in an outdoor oven. Cheeses, halloumi is only allowed to be produced in Cyprus and must carry the logo now. Feta cheese also. But if we're talking about actual products, the things to look for when you come to buy here are leather, copper, pottery, silver and lace. They are the main things, and if you want to know more about those, my Monday lives, I have been covering each one of those slowly so you can learn a lot more about those. And yes, all those things are still made by hand in Cyprus.
Most of the major products are all to do with goats. You've got halloumi, you've got goat milk, and the byproduct is kleftiko, which is really nice to eat, nice and tender if done properly in the oven.
Yes, Cyprus. I'm very happy here, thank you very much. I've travelled all over the world and we had the choice of any country to make our final move to, and all things considered, we chose Cyprus. If I had to leave here and go somewhere else, we did consider the Caribbean. I love it so much. I also liked the music and the lifestyle of everything being free in Cuba, though I understand things there, why they are so. If I had to go somewhere else, perhaps I would choose somewhere in the Caribbean, Bahamas, for example. But for me, I'm staying here, thanks very much. So I did choose Cyprus.
Nowhere in particular. What I would like to do is get on one of these space things and blat around the world and have a look at the world from space. Otherwise, no. Nowhere else I'd really want to go at the moment. I've never been to Spain or Portugal because I never fancied going to Spain or Portugal. Been to France, didn't want to live there. Came to Cyprus a couple of times, was really nice. There are other countries to live in, but there's less to do and too far away from family. So this seemed like the ideal place.
For me, I have done videos on this before, and I will link 2 of them in the description below that tells of our journey here to Cyprus and why we picked Cyprus. But in brief, the weather was very important for us, to be beyond Europe for the good weather, and our summers are far extended than the places you mentioned, Spain and Portugal. We don't get such harsh winters, and our days get hot from early in the morning to late at night. That suits us. One of the other main categories was price comparison for land and property, particularly cultivated land and also houses that were ready built in comparison to rural land in other countries with ruins. And finally, cost of living comparison, and also no bureaucracy with paperwork and permissions. They're the main factors.
Tomatoes, because they're very versatile and full of vitamin C and really good flavour.
Ha! An easy question for me. Any kind of zucchini, because it's so versatile, it fills your belly and you can freeze it. So you can grow as much as you like, freeze it, make it into so many different things, and it's so easy to grow. Zucchini.
Obviously the weather. It's just getting more and more damp and miserable and cold in England. Even in the summer, used to have a kit card, take the top off, chances are you were going to get wet because it was going to rain even during the summer holidays. So it wasn't enjoyable at all living in that sort of climate. Whereas out here, yeah, okay, it gets cooler in the winter, not as cold as back in England, but it's still manageable and you can get on with things.
Well, that's a difficult question to pick one thing. It's obviously a multiple of things, but I would say if I have to say one thing overall, it's the landscape of the country. So particularly the area we've chosen to live, the scenery, the landscape, the open spaces, that is my number one thing. You've got the sea, the mountains, the countryside, and yet if you want towns, cities, big shopping, places to go, theatres, they're in easy reach. So location, location, location. Cyprus has it all, but for me the one big draw right here is the scenery. Question. For the longest time I can remember, I wanted to be a hairdresser. I'd always thought that, and I think the reason for that was my mum wasn't very good at doing hair. She could do basic pigtails, plaits, whatever you may call them, and ponytails and half ponytails, and she wasn't too bad doing the buns for dancing. But I wanted exotic hairstyles, fancy things, and she couldn't do them. So I said I was going to be a hairdresser. And I stuck with that for a very long time. I even got a place in the London College of Fashion to be a hairdresser, and my mum banned me from doing it because she didn't want me travelling on the tube to go to London for the coursework each day, and she certainly didn't want me to live there. So that was out, plus the fact that you had to work Saturdays being a hairdresser, and my mum said, well, you have to give up dancing if you do that, because dancing was all day Saturday. So that's when it finished, the idea of being a hairdresser.
Well, I quite fancied being a footballer, but unfortunately my health wasn't good enough. No, not at all. We're both looking forward to it.
No, not at all. Not for either of us in any respect. Is there anything we miss from England? No. Who decided on it? Well, Mike initially suggested Cyprus, but when I came and looked, I knew it was the option for us both to cover what we both wanted and needed. What's our biggest regret? Nothing. The only thing that I lost from moving here was my very high disability benefits and all the things that came with that, such as a PA, which I need. Mike does his best for me, but I could do with a permanent PA, a personal assistant. So that's the only thing, but I was willing to give up that. Obviously, I gave up my huge dance school. I've spoken of the history of that and what I've done from there and so forth, but I couldn't do it now anyway, so nothing lost there. Mike now has shaky hands, so he couldn't continue working anyway, so that was something we didn't foresee, but that worked out fine. And here it's actually cost us less to live this lifestyle and not have a job than it would to work. So there's that. So no regrets at all. We're near enough if anyone does want to come and visit us that they can come here cheaply and quickly. So that's not a downside. And that was one of the reasons I switched my wedding to here. Mike thought it'd be lovely if we switched it from Mauritius, where we had it all thought and planned but not actually paid for. So we switched it to here, as Mike said, well, would you rather do it where it's going to be our new home, and then people could come easily to the wedding as well if they wanted to. So no regrets at all. The only other thing maybe I miss, but I don't regret and wouldn't move back for it, is being able to get anywhere and everywhere easily for me on public transport. There now are no trains in Cyprus, so that's the only way I'm stuck. But apart from that, no regrets at all, and it was so easy to move here, I couldn't wait. Hence I came out here a month before Mike to live, because he had to finish his time at work, give his notice, whereas I could move straight away. So I came. Remember, we weren't married then, so I just hope he was still going to come. Had he not have come, I would have stayed here anyway. So that just shows you. And it was good because I came out that month early. I got things set up here, and he finished off things there. So I hope that answers your question quite fully. I think maybe you might also have been talking about the transition to Cyprus. I've just thought maybe that's something you was interested in. When we moved here, it was part of the EU, so things were very similar. We drive on the same side of the road as England, so for Mike that wasn't an issue. Everything was pretty straightforward, and this links into the question of why Cyprus. It was the most least paperwork, least fiff-faff. Do you know fiff-faff? Messing about or going here, there, everywhere.
Cypriots do complain about paperwork and those kind of things, officialdom, but it's nothing to us when we come from England, which is far more not allowing you things that you're entitled to unless you know about them, and so on and so forth. Everything was quite easy, straightforward, very quick to buy property here. It's a matter of weeks. Nothing is very expensive here. There was a lot of similar things because there are English connections in history, so there's a lot of similarity here. We found things quite easily. The Cypriots are very helpful. Everything's word of mouth. For example, if you want directions to somewhere, they will tell you instead of left, right, down this road, that road, and names of roads, they will say things like, go to Stelios' house. If you can't find the way from there, ask him. Or if not, go on to Petros' house and then find the old goat farm, and that will be the way directions are. So I like there's not a lot of social media type internet website, that kind of thing here. It is literally word of mouth, where to go and things like that. So things are easy to find out and do. Any other transitions? As I say, documents, paperwork, that's all very simple. The hardest thing was sorting out our marriage because we were the first two English people residing in Cyprus to get married with a proper wedding rather than a hotel type wedding. So that was more, they didn't know what to do with us. So that was the hardest thing, as I say, everything. Oh, and obviously all paperwork is in Greek, which is fair enough. So that would be probably, I learnt Greek and Cypriot straight away, but the documents are actually in ancient Greek, and that's another thing altogether. But no, people will help you. Translators are here, then, everywhere if you want them. No problem. Good question. Well, I like aniseed sweets. What would I be? I think a soft centre. Any soft centre for sure. That's my personality. Although maybe with a hard coating, because I have to trust people first and I will not be taken for a ride. And as you all know, I like fair play, so I need that hard surface to do my battles for others. But what sort of sweet will I be? I'm going to say something like a Texan bar, which was an English sweet in the 70s, because I loved the 70s, and that was a chocolate bar. Think of like a Mars bar, as in chocolate bar, and the inner, it wasn't nougat because I don't like nougat, but it was a kind of white chewy toffee, and that's me, 70s. So let's say I'm a Texan bar. Next question.
I'd rather know what of, so I know what I'm capable of doing till I go.
Well, that's a great question. I would say when. Because if you just know what you die of, let's say it's a car crash, then you're going to worry every time you get in a car. Whereas if you know when you're going to die, you can live your life to the full until that point and not worry about it. So I would definitely say when.
didn't choose farm life. And it wasn't a question of choice of one or the other, it was a question of looking around for property, to whatever property we wanted. And this kind of ticked a lot of boxes, gave us some space, you wanted to grow some stuffs, and it kind of went from there.
As Mike explains, we actually bought the beach location first, and then I wanted more garden space, and we gave the details to the estate agent, and this is where they sent us. And look, why could you not love this? This is exactly where we live. We enjoy the village life. We like the immersion more into the real life of the Cypriot rural local people, and they love us for not being in an English community. I never chose to be a homesteader. Basically, everyone calls me the accidental homesteader. All it was some olive trees here, and obviously we had to learn how to deal with those. And then we bought some tomatoes and some peppers, and I said, oh hey, I'm going to grow these, and it just stemmed from there. I'm not a farmer or not really a homesteader, hence why I don't use that in my channel name. I just enjoy growing things as a hobby, and yes, it's gone totally crazy. But this is part of why I wouldn't have animals. I've never intended to be a homesteader, I just enjoy growing. Other reasons that we live here rather than in a town or by the coast: the cost of living with all the land we have is actually far, far less than the property we had by the beach. So there's less bills. Also now, particularly because of the pandemic, it meant that two things. One, we could afford to still keep living, which has, if we'd have been in the beach property, I don't know what would have happened to us by now. And we get free water here, there's a local spring, so there's far less bills. And also during lockdown, look where I could go. In a town or by the beach, I could not have left the house, but here I could wander around to my heart's content, and there was not a problem. And finally here, of course, we can build our Airbnbs and we can have workaways come and help us. So they are the main factors. Sitting around all day is not for us, and we have views of the sea, as you can tell by this picture. Perfect.